Hi folks, it's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're talking about personal practice time and how to best use your time and how to train you to become a better player through personal practice and warm up and preparation and all of that good stuff, and basically how to have a good practice session, let's say of 30 minutes, and how would I approach that. I have to say that many of the things I'm going to mention on this video are great tools, great ways to practice, but I have to confess I don't always use all of them in my own personal practice, but you get the idea of how I would approach preparing a solo or a piece of music or a study in order to make it sound better. So our personal practice time is a bit like being an athlete, highly toned, like I am, or at least I was before lockdown. I seem to put on a little bit of weight, but it's the same process. If you want to be efficient and good at what you do, you have to prepare in the right way to do that most effectively. And like athletes who run races, and not only do they practice every day and go for runs, but they stretch, they warm up, and they practice the right things so that when it comes to race day, they're ready to go. We're going to start today with the fundamental of breathing. If you don't breathe, well, you die. But in brass playing, of course, you need to take on so much more air than you normally might. So just to relax our bodies, making sure that our posture is good, that we are in a relaxed position. It's a bit like if you play golf, that you want to be relaxed before you address the ball, and your feet kind of shoulder length apart, and nothing too rigid, certainly nothing, no tension. So you want to shake that all out and get rid of that and make sure that you're very relaxed as you go into your practice session. And if you are relaxed going into practice, then you should be relaxed going into performance. So we're going to breathe, and we're simply going to breathe in over 4 and then blow out over 4, or we might say inhale over 4, exhale over 4. And once we've done that a few times, we'll move on to something else. Here we go. After 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you might feel a little bit lightheaded if you're out of practice at breathing. But breathing is something you can practice when you're laying in bed at night, or when you're walking the dog around the block. You can practice that. Just making sure that you're working the machinery God has given you inside, i.e. your lungs, to make sure that you're expanding and contracting that. And then you might choose to inhale over less beats. Let's say inhaling over 2, breathing out over 4. 1, 2. Okay, you get the idea of that. Let's try it over an 8th note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, that's what we're going to do. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, and some people have a hard time imagining what it is to breathe in and taking in a lot of air. And sometimes it's best to think of being surprised and taking a lot of air that way. Perhaps you realise it's Christmas morning and there's $1 million under the tree. Or perhaps you've just realised that a crocodile has crawled into your bedroom. And that's the kind of intake of air that we need. Often in music we need it quite fast, and sometimes you want to breathe in, inhale rhythmically. Okay, I think you get the idea of breathing, and there's some great resources out there like the Breathing Gym, and you can practice blowing out at piano, or blowing out a mezzo forte, or fortissimo. And there's several things you can try to see what it's like to breathe in and out with a bit of resistance. Okay, that type of thing. The next stage, if I had time in my warm-up routine, would be to buzz. and that just kind of gets the air going and gives you an idea of what you're going to do on your mouthpiece, and also gets the blood to your lips, because some of you are going to roll out of bed and do this, I know. You'll have heard it said many times that long notes are a great way to get warmed up in practice, and even some of the best musicians in the world that are playing fast and high and crazy licks warm up with just low, long tones. And this really is kind of a fundamental to build upon. If you can play a good long tone with good breath support, the intonation's good, the sound and tone quality, which is really important, is good, then you can go on from there. Of course, scales, I'm afraid, are a really important part of becoming a fine brass player. I know you don't like them, but I promise you that in much of the repertoire and music there will be scales. There are a number of ways you can do it. You can just simply play nice quarter notes that are evenly spaced out. And trying to concentrate on an even sound and making sure the intonation is good and making sure that it sounds as good at the bottom as it does at the top. And all the time your brain is thinking what note is coming next and what's sharp and what key signature I'm in. That's one way of doing it. So another way of doing it would be to think about playing in different styles. So maybe playing in a staccato, detached way. And then, of course, playing in a legato way. And that's a good workout, for, particularly for trombone players. We don't just have to push valves down. We actually have to deal with natural slurs and assisted slurs, using our tongue sometimes, not using it, in order to make that work. So it's a really good exercise for trombone players to play in legato style, but obviously for everybody it's a good way. And you might want to spice it up a little bit with some rhythm. Something like that, just to make it more interesting. And then you should go through all your major scales and your minor scales, and it's just a good way of getting warmed up and getting your brain acclimated, ready to work hard. I like to warm up with a tune, just something that usually is just in my head, in my ear, something that might jump out at me, and often just playing a hymn tune. Sometimes when I start thinking about the words, I'm thinking, oh, this is so appropriate for today. It's amazing how the Holy Spirit works like that. But if you're playing just a tune, it might be anything that just comes to mind. To play maybe 2 or 3 tunes, just whatever's on my mind, and usually I would do it without music, just to kind of test my memory and check my intervals to see if I can do that without reading the notes. But having a first cornet, solo cornet tune book in front of you would be just as good. I want to talk to you about the different ways of producing a sound. Obviously we want to have a good breath intake, a good buzz, and then we want a good tone. But there's a couple of ways that we can use our tongue or not use our tongue to produce a note. My YP band leader taught me how to play when I was just 6.5, taught me the trombone, and his way of teaching was to simply say ta 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 ta, ta ta ta, and he really wanted that kind of attack. So a ta is a legitimate way to produce a note. ta ta ta, or to 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 if you want a rounded vowel behind that. But that's useful if you're playing a march, or if you're playing something detached or brighter. Maybe an upbeat hymn tune from the tune book would certainly use a ta or a to attack. If you're playing accents, often it will be using a ta attack. The second one is a little bit softer, and it's a da or a do. Just a little bit more connected. Da 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 da, or do 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 do. You can hear the articulation. You can hear that sound, but and then it dies down. If you analyze a note, the loudest point should be at the beginning. Ta, and then it comes away like a bell effect. Ta, ta is the idea, or da. So on a ta and a da, there's this spike at the beginning of the note, and then it kind of levels out, and then it dives down. The legato way of playing is often using a la tongue. La 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 la. If you think about the three we've learned, ta 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 ta, da 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 da, la 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 la. You can hear it's getting more connected. And obviously you want to use a la tongue when you're playing legato, particularly when you're playing hymn tunes. If they're more devotional in nature, we want that warm sound, and we want it to be as connected as possible. We don't need to be seeing your tongue come out the bell or hearing a really hard articulation. So la. So it's a little bit smoother than da, certainly a lot smoother than ta, but la or lu, if you're looking for a rounder vowel sound on that, would be the third way to go. And then, of course, you could go without any tongue at all, and that would be ah. So I want you to try this, because when using an ah tongue, sometimes your tongue will come back in. It can't help itself. It wants to be involved, but it really doesn't need it. Because if you're playing something that's particularly slurred, particularly on a valve instrument, and you don't need to use your tongue, it's a pure sound. You don't need any articulation. You're looking for one column of air, and then you're simply changing the notes by changing the fingering and adapting your embouchure. Here's ah. So no tongue at all, and you have to kind of train yourself to not use your tongue and not cheat sometimes, but use that ah tongue if you can. Sometimes the hardest part will be the beginning of the note. Pa. Sometimes it's hard to do, and you want to rely on your tongue, but your tongue really is just there to allow the air column to move. And if you use too much tongue, it kind of gets in the way. So an R tongue is really important too if you're playing something very sustained, very legato, if you can. Finally, I should just say that those of you who can double tongue would also use the kind of back of the throat ku, tu ku tu ku tu ku, or lazily we might say dugga dugga dugga, but it's a way to double tongue. Dugga 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 dum. So you're training yourself to go tucka 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 tucka, and it just allows you to play particularly 16th notes a lot quicker than single tonguing. If you're not very good at single tonguing 16th notes, double tonguing is a way to help you out with that, and it's the kind of the k or the g at the back of your throat that allows you to do that. It's something you could practice when you're in bed and you can't go to sleep, and just kind of speed it up and get going like that. I like to warm up on my instrument and maybe do some lip solos. So we're going to look up my first piece of music to practice, and I would probably choose something that's slower to start with, maybe, just to keep my warm-up going. And I've chosen a piece called Panis Angelicus by Caesar Franck. and a very slow melody, and nothing too difficult about this. But I'm trying to center my tone, making sure my intonation is good, making sure my articulations and the column of air, which is really crucial, is just flowing. Here's a few bars of Panis Angelicus. Notice I couldn't quite produce that E flat there, that last pitch that I played. I didn't quite have enough breath support. So metering out your breath and making sure that you're breathing at the right times is an important part. And often I would write in my music where to breathe. This piece is pretty obvious, but sometimes you've got to actually mark it. Breathe, breathe, just to train yourself to do it the same way every time. There's a few things in here. Look at letter A. There's a few slurs that I might go over. And on a trombone, the first slur is a natural one. You can go from third position to first position without having to use your tongue. But the next one, going from a B flat to an A flat, you have to assist it with your tongue. And you really want that to come out. You don't want it to sound like a tied A flat there. There's definitely a 16th note that needs to be picked out. So two things I was unhappy about there. One was my breath. I didn't quite feel it was under control, and I didn't like how I went from that C to that A flat. I'm going to look at another slow melody here. This is a section from Rimsky-Korsakov's Trombone Concerto, the middle movement, which is quite nice. It has a little cadenza in it, and we'll look at a little bit of this. This is the beginning of the second movement. It's in 6/8 and plenty of flats, which is nice. And I should say that it's very expressive, which is the kind of music I like to play. Wasn't really happy with those three pitches, so I might go over that again and just polish up the bits that didn't go well. Making sure my breathing and my slurs are absolutely right. That was not perfect by any means. And making sure that I go for the pulse of the music. Let's see if I can make that more musical. Yeah, I didn't feel like I had enough air going into that last phrase, but you get the idea. Here's the cadenza at the bottom of the page, and I'll just play it through pretty unmusically first time. I could probably make more of those dynamics. Dynamics are something that we always harp on about as bandmasters, and you should too in your personal practice, but I get frustrated by that because they're already on the page. So it's something that you should just do. You don't need to be told necessarily, but it is something that you do need to exaggerate, particularly as a solo player. Here's the cadenza again. That's the idea, and I would probably go over that and start to look at, am I playing those staccato? Am I really mirroring it? Because it's kind of an echo effect, this particular cadenza. This next piece is called Morceau Symphonique. It's a very popular piece in the trombone repertoire, also known in English as a concert piece by Alexandre Guillemot. And this is the beginning. The trombone comes in after a couple of measures. Sounds like this. So a couple of things about this. You can see where I kind of lean in, and it's not written in the music, but it's a flatter note, and it kind of is heavy and sad, and I want to really lean into that a little bit. And then when you get the dotted 8th note 16th pattern, I really want to bring that out. So here you have a detached dotted rhythm and then suddenly a slurred section. We get our first kind of forte moment at the con anima. If you look at the next section, the 3/4 Allegro Moderato, it's a bunch of scales. Really not happy with the way I played that, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to slow that scale down. See how important it is to practice your scales. And I'm going to try and double tongue because my single tongue isn't very good. And really going after those accents, making sure that I bring some life out of the music. There's a great section in the middle of this piece that's slow and expressive and has a really high note in it. For B-flat instruments, it's a high D sharp or a C sharp in what is tenor clef for the trombone player. It sounds like this. So when I'm approaching that high note, I'm going to make sure that I line my breath up right and I kind of squeeze everything together in order to get that high note and make it as bright and brilliant as I can. Tricky bit at the end of this, fortissimo in the last 3 lines, triplets that are really hard to play. Let's see if I can remember how to play this. So in working these triplets, I'm going to slow them down, and this is a classic practice technique of slowing things down, isolating them, and then speeding them up. Still can't get that right. So they're all half tones, I should know that. And just making sure that my coordination is working now. It's been a little while since I've played this. So if I get something wrong, I'm not just going to go back and fix it and get it right. I'm going to keep going on it, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times till I can't get it wrong. I just want to show you a piece that I used to play. It's actually an unaccompanied piece of music for trombone, solo trombone, written by Len Bernstein, and slow and easy, and it's in 12/8, and it's in the tenor clef. And you can see lots of squiggles and markings, as many markings as there are notes, honestly. At the beginning, I'm featuring some alternate positions. For those that play valve instruments, sometimes an alternate valve will help you with the intonation. For a trombone, it's a practical thing. Are you close to a different position so your slide is not doing this the whole time? Times where I need to flatten a note, you can see that. Times where I need to breathe, those breath marks are there. I've even written some positions in, just in case maybe I played it wrong once and I thought I'm not playing that wrong twice. So I've written some positions in, some slurs that I've written in that I kind of think work for me. Phrases, I even say on the last note, relax. That's kind of a hard note to play, this last couple of measures. And I'm just telling myself just to relax on that last note. This is a piece, it's a cool piece, but it's about a dog called Mickey. At the end of my practice routine, I wouldn't finish with a piece that was incredibly difficult and hard to play. I would probably play a slow melody, and I would kind of reverse what I did at the beginning in kind of warming down. If you watch athletes play and you see them after a soccer game or a basketball game still kind of running around, you're thinking, why are you still running? Aren't you exhausted? Well, they're warming down their body and slowing it down so that they can recover quicker. And so we have to do the same kind of thing. And often you might be in a band rehearsal and you finish with just a hymn tune, just to kind of cleanse the palate and just allow things to settle a little bit. And that's a good way to finish a practice routine, just with a simple melody like we started at the beginning. And you could even finish with some low notes, some low tones and that type of thing. And I think, it's better to do 12 minutes a day, every day, than it is to do 2 hours, once every week or something. Better to do little bits each day, and that kind of builds your stamina up and your endurance and your range as well, because there are times where you think, oh, I can't hit that high G. But if you keep working up to it and using those scales to go higher and higher, and eventually it'll become second nature and quite natural, and you'll get it. I hope this video has been helpful to you, and look forward to seeing you next time.